Hey everybody, what's going on? Dr. Chad Woolner here.
And Dr. Buddy Allen.
And this is episode 23 of the Health Fundamentals Podcast. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about all things cholesterol, separating fact from fiction. So let's get started.
You're listening to the Health Fundamentals Podcast. I'm Dr. Chad Woolner.
And I'm Dr. Buddy Allen. And this show is about giving you the simple but powerful cutting-edge tools you need to change your health and your life.
So sit back and enjoy the show as we show you the path to your best life down to a science.
So hey everybody, hope you guys are having a great day. Today we figured we would tackle a relatively controversial topic, that being cholesterol. If you followed this show for any length of time, you'd come to find that we try to steer clear of extremes, not because we're afraid of tackling difficult subjects, but just because we find that more often than not, extremes don't really lead us into truth. You know, more often than not,
start missing the mark.
You bet. More often than not, when we start veering into these really, kind of heels dug in camps on either end of the spectrum, wherever that may be, we tend to find that you find less truth and more bias, is what you find. But the interesting thing is this topic here is a real hot button topic when we talk about cholesterol and more specifically, cholesterol drugs. Specifically, we're talking about statins. And what you'll find is if you start really doing even just a casual search online, what you will find is an overwhelming body of evidence showing that statins are, for the most part, worthless. And yet, it still is part of an agenda of prescribing them. And it, like the status quo is going to remain the same for the indefinite future is what it looks like, in spite of new guidelines and new evidence showing and suggesting, A, that cholesterol is not the boogeyman that we once thought it was and claimed it was, and B, that statins are not the savior drugs that the pharmaceutical companies marketed them to be, you know? So let me just start off with this. There's an article that was published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine. I'm trying to find the date here. October 1st, 2018. And this is the abstract. They said, statins are the most widely prescribed cholesterol-lowering drugs in the world. Despite the expiration of their patents, which is typically when most pharmaceutical companies' drugs start to take a dramatic hit in terms of the revenue, in terms of their profit. Revenue for statins is expected to rise, with total sales, get this, total sales on track to reach an estimated $1 trillion by 2020. That's just next year.
Yeah.
That is how much money we're talking about here. So when you're talking about, we're not even talking money in the billions, which is still unfathomable. We're talking about money in the trillions. That's like government money. That's like the United States, like
deficit money.
Budget.
Yeah, this is crazy. Yeah,
deficit, and it's that type of money. So they went on to say a bitter dispute has erupted among doctors over suggestions that statins should be prescribed to millions of healthy people at low risk of heart disease. There are concerns that the benefits have been exaggerated and that the risks have been underplayed. Also, the raw data on the efficacy and safety of statins are being kept secret and have not been subjected to scrutiny by other scientists. This lack of transparency has led to an erosion of public confidence. Doctors and patients are being misled about the true benefits and harms of statins, and it is now a matter of urgency that the raw data from the clinical trials are released. Well, we do have some of that data that's out there. You know, one of the first real studies that we learned about in school that really helped to I think was the beginning, eye-opening towards like the real true nature of cholesterol.
And this is 16 years ago.
Right. Yeah, this is a while ago, was the Framingham study, which, if I'm correct, is still ongoing.
Oh, yeah. The Framingham study's been going on for 30
plus years.
It started back in like the 50s or 60s, right?
40, yeah, you're right.
Framingham, Massachusetts.
Yep.
So it's longer than that. It's been going on for a long time. And basically what they've been doing is it's a prospective study that's just been kind of ongoing. They've been looking at a group of people, and what they've been trying to tease out are answers to questions such as, what's the story with cholesterol? Is it good for you? Does elevated cholesterol make a difference? Does it harm us? And then looking at other risk factors associated with heart disease, or what they call coronary heart disease or coronary artery disease. Mm-hmm. This is kind of crazy.
It's really crazy. And really, when you kind of start diving into things, think about, it really comes down to that causation versus correlation.
You bet.
And that's really kind of where they got their ground to, I guess, initially run from with the medication is, listen, if people who are dying have clogged, or of heart disease, have clogged arteries, and they have a lot of, and
elevated cholesterol,
elevated exactly. So they kind of start saying, well, if that's the case, that means the cholesterol must be causing the coronary artery disease, which is frankly not true.
Well, and again, it's one of those things where at the beginning it seems not only plausible but very reasonable to assume that's the case, right? So let's first start by, maybe for those listening here, because oftentimes we hear these misnomers like good cholesterol and bad cholesterol, mm-hmm. and I think that sometimes can lead people astray in and of itself. Cholesterol is cholesterol, right? Mm-hmm. Cholesterol is a fat. It's something that our body uses to synthesize or create a variety of different hormones in our body, very important ones. So a lot of our sex hormones are derived from cholesterol. You look at hormones like progesterone, testosterone, estrogen, cortisol. These are all derived from cholesterol. Our body needs cholesterol to be able to produce these essential hormones for our health, our growth, and development, right?
Virtually, every cell wall in our body has cholesterol that makes up the lipid bilayer.
Yeah. Right.
And so when there's damaged cells in our body, we need cholesterol to help repair them.
Right. So let's maybe unpack that for people and to explain. So why do people get, in many cases, elevated levels of cholesterol?
Wonderful. Right? And when we look at that, it comes down to inflammation and irritation to the vessel linings,
right. So when we have increased inflammation in the body,
yes.
When there's inflammation leads to damage in the body. We can call this inflammation. Some people will call it free radical damage.
You bet.
It's virtually the same thing.
People who smoke. People who have high blood sugar, diabetics, they have horrible, these are people that have classically.
Well, and you don't even have to be diabetic necessarily, right? High blood sugar is not good for the body. It's toxic to the body. Whether you're diabetic or not, it's gonna have a detrimental impact on your body.
Exactly.
So eating, foods that are high in sugars, heavily processed foods, basically just eating a diet that is not a healthy diet is going to lead to inflammation. Smoking, sedentary lifestyle, too much drinking. These are all the types of things that are going to lead to inflammation in the body. When you have increased inflammation in the body, it's going to create damage. And one of the most common places where it will create damage is the inner lining of blood vessels, mm-hmm. and more specifically, blood vessels that are coronary blood vessels that surround and supply blood to the heart itself. Mm-hmm. And so what happens? What does the body do when we have damage to those blood vessels, the inner linings?
It ships out cholesterol so it can heal the damaged areas.
And again, that's a normal, very natural, and very healthy response. The body is just doing what it's supposed to do: heal itself and take care of itself, manage itself. The problem is that what happens when the cholesterol gets there, it patches up the inner lining of those blood vessels, and yet we still continue to do the same things that got us there in the first place.
Sure.
Well, inflammation doesn't go down, and so what happens when inflammation hits that cholesterol?
Same thing. It irritates it, breaks it down, so more cholesterol comes to repair it.
Right.
So
and then
like
what
painting
happens,
a wall over and over.
Right. Well, and then what happens is this process, the technical term is atherosclerosis, mm-hmm. is the term. And basically what that means is that cholesterol now starts to harden. It not only starts to put more there to try and repair the damage, but it starts to get hard. And that's where the damage starts. That's where the real kind of risk, danger, I guess is the word, where all of a sudden it starts to narrow. Because imagine that, right? It's like you're putting up the wall only to put more putty, and it starts to harden and get thicker. And when they harden and get less thick, not only does it create a narrowing effect, but the blood vessels normally should have a certain flexibility or pliability to them to allow blood that's moving through to be able to create a decent amount of stretch on those blood vessels to allow that blood to flow properly. But the problem is if that blood vessel hardens, if it doesn't have that stretch on it that normally happens, it constricts and restricts proper blood flow, which is ultimately what leads to heart attack. It blocks it off completely. So cholesterol, despite what some may say, is not the boogeyman that it has been made out to be. So, but in order for us to be able to sell statin drugs,
we have to make it the demon.
The narrative has to remain the same. And again, at the beginning, when it first came, when this whole cholesterol causes, increased cholesterol is
causes
the
heart
thing that
disease.
Causes heart disease, it would seem the logical step to that would be, well,
Decrease
then we decrease it via these cholesterol lowering drugs, and that would make perfect sense. The problem, though, is that when you look at the studies, what does it say in terms of the effectiveness of statins' ability to actually lower cholesterol? It's negligible at best.
Not very good.
Not very good. And then on top of that, what we start to now see is a growing body of evidence of some pretty nasty side effects and risks associated with continual use of statin drugs. What are some of those risks?
One of the probably most scary ones is the risk of increasing your risk of getting diabetes, type 2 diabetes, that is. And they say in those who are who have that are leaning that way anyhow, it's going to increase those risks, but it's a pretty substantial amount. 38%, I think you had read in one of the studies. Like it's significant.
So yeah, get this. This was published just March of this year, 2019, March 7th of 2019, published in the New York Times. This is what they said. Statins may increase risk of diabetes. The risk may be especially high in those who are overweight. So for a while, the evidence was kind of like, yeah, it looks like that. But what they say now is the link between statin use and the development of type 2 diabetes may be even stronger than previously believed, a new study suggests. Researchers prospectively studied 8,567 men and women whose average age was 64. All were free of diabetes and not taking statins when the study started. In a follow-up of up to 15 years, about 12% of the group started taking statins. So roughly, we'll just guesstimate about 1,000 people, right?
Yep.
8,500, 12%. I'm just estimating it's probably going to be a little bit of right at about 1,000, right? In fact, we'll just do the math real quick so we know.
An exact number.
So we'll give them an exact number. It was 12% of 8,567 times 0.12, 1,028 to be exact. So
pretty good guess.
A little over 1,000, right? All right, 12% of the group were taking statins, most using either Zocor or Lipitor, known as simvastatin or atorvastatin, and the rest either Prevacol or Lescol, which is Prevastatin or Fluvastatin. Most took them for more than a year, and there were 716 new cases of diabetes in the group. After controlling for age, sex, smoking, family history of diabetes, and many other risk factors, they found that statin use, get this, was associated with higher risk for insulin resistance and high blood sugar, and with a 38% increased risk for the development of type 2 diabetes.
That's massive.
That is crazy. And we were just reading from a medical center. They basically did like are statins really that bad? And they basically went line by line, and they were saying, some say that this is what they said about the diabetes risk. This was their take on it. They went as, and they said, will statins increase my risk for diabetes or complicate existing diabetes? The risk is true to some extent, but it's wildly exaggerated, is what they said. So if you think 38% increased risk is a wild exaggeration, then boy, that doesn't seem wildly exaggerated
lost for
to
words
me.
there.
Yeah, 38% increased risk. Like, that's crazy. I mean, we're broaching, I don't want to like overestimate here, but like 38 ain't too far from 50%.
No, not
you
a
know
bit.
what I mean? Like, so that's, I mean, 1/3 if we're extrapolating that, right?
And here's the rub on this is to decrease all to eliminate these risk factors and all of these terrible things. There's some simple things you can do to change lifestyle, and I'm not talking huge things where you would these drugs are totally irrelevant, 100% irrelevant.
And so what are those things first?
So things like making sure you're eating a healthy diet, losing weight, get to a healthy weight. That's a starting point.
Let's give a little bit more of a framework in terms of macros. What we would be saying for a healthy diet. They say, and they say here, actually, they say in this study,
they mentioned the Mediterranean diet,
which again has evolved to some degree in terms of what people are shifting towards. I would say Mediterranean, ketogenic, or paleo-esque style diet. And I'm sure when we get into the really nitty-gritty fine-tuning of that, some people would say it's totally different. At the end of the day, the way I say it is, look, increase your healthy fats, increase vegetables, green leafy vegetables, colorful vegetables, eat lean, moderate amounts of protein, and lower dramatically your carbohydrate intake, especially refined carbohydrates. Eliminate, just the junk.
Well, things like exercise. Quitting smoking. Obviously, things we already know we should be doing.
Right.
Decrease the amount of alcohol. If you consume alcohol, decrease it. They say low to moderate is okay, but anything above that, you're causing all kinds of damage. Increasing fiber, like you mentioned, increasing healthy fats, especially omega-3 fatty acids.
You bet.
Because they are very anti-inflammatory in nature. And again, inflammation is what causes the damage.
And that's the point I think that we need to drive home here, is that all of these things are not going to directly lower cholesterol. That's not what we're talking about here. What these things are going to do is help reduce systemic inflammation in the body, which will in turn lower cholesterol.
Exactly.
Right? Or and I shouldn't even say necessarily lower cholesterol, but allow your body to produce the correct amount of cholesterol for your body. Right? That's the point. Your body is going to normalize, and ultimately what you're doing is you're giving your body what it needs to be able to do what it knows how to do inherently. And that's one of the neatest things that we get to see in our practice, is the literal miracle that is the human body, in the sense that our body knows exactly what it needs to do. Our body knows what it needs. Our body knows how to do what it needs to do to heal itself and to maintain itself. But the thing is that we need to give it what it needs to be able to do that, right? We oftentimes will use the analogy of a plant, like a plant or a tree or whatever. What is it that it needs? Well, it needs sunlight, needs water, it needs fertilizer and nutrients and those things that it needs to be able to take care of and grow itself. When you give it those things, it knows what to do. It's the same thing with our body, right?
You bet.
Same idea. The challenge, though, when you say that, there's a rub to that. What you're saying there is the problem, buddy, is that you've got two options here. Option A, you got to be
requires
proactive.
No effort.
Well, I was going to say option A does require effort,
gotcha.
right? The exercise. But option B, the appeal of a statin drug is that it's a drug. All I have to do is just
pill.
You mean to tell me that I can continue to do, and that's the thing. That's the kind of clever pitch of the drug companies, is they're not stupid. They're not going to say, just take this drug and everything will be okay. They don't have to directly say that. It's implicit in the fact that what they're, you know what I mean?
You bet.
They'll say, like, just take this drug and then exercise and diet and do all the, they like mumble that under their breath. But the reality of it is that it's always going to be inherently far more appealing and easier to take the easy way, oh man,
it's huge.
Crazy.
And I would say for me, like, if we boiled this all down, it's take charge of your health.
Absolutely.
Don't give that over to somebody else. The
Or some
reality
drug.
here is that's what I mean.
Yeah.
You're by giving, letting them just give you this medication, you are giving over that control that you have, and you can do all of this yourself.
You totally
all right?
can.
100%. You can do this all yourself.
Back in July of 2015, the World Journal of Cardiology, they put out a paper called "Cholesterol Confusion and Statin Controversy." I think this is a good place to kind of end.
Yes.
They said the role of blood cholesterol levels in coronary heart disease and the true effect of cholesterol-lowering statin drugs are debatable. In particular, whether statins actually decrease cardiac mortality and increase life expectancy is controversial. Concurrently, the Mediterranean diet model has been shown to prolong life and reduce the risk of diabetes, cancer, and coronary heart disease. We herein review current data related to both statins and Mediterranean diet. We conclude that the expectation that coronary heart disease could be prevented or eliminated by simply reducing cholesterol appears unfounded. On the contrary, we should acknowledge the inconsistencies of the cholesterol theory and recognize the proven benefits of a healthy lifestyle incorporating a Mediterranean diet to prevent coronary heart disease. So really what they're basically saying is, what they're concluding here is what we basically just said here, right? We're not trying to base this off of some personal bias or vendetta. We hope that that's really crystal clear here, that we are not anti-drug. Sometimes and I would say many times drugs have a very profound and powerful place in helping to prolong life and even save lives. But this just happens to be one area, unfortunately, where they do not. And the problem is when we're talking about a $1 trillion industry here, that is not something that is going to go away easily or lightly. That's not something that a drug company is going to just relinquish. Oh, well, we see the error of our ways here. We see that the evidence is overwhelming that this drug doesn't work. So we're just going to let go of this $1 trillion profit-making machine.
$1 trillion buys a lot of people's attention.
You bet. Absolutely.
Whether they think so or not.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like what we're producing or what we're sharing here is nothing new.
Yeah.
Like this news has been around. Literally, it's been, I would say, a minimum of 20 to 30 years. We've known this information.
You bet.
Safely concluding, like we know that statin drugs are not what they purport to be. That cholesterol is not the scary thing that it has been made out to be, and that lifestyle is going to be the driver to help reduce heart disease. And so it's and it's the same sort of thing as the whole this ties in very, very clearly to the fat being the cause of people being fat versus sugar. The sugar industry has been pushing to demonize fat for a long time. So anyways, any other thoughts on this?
Nope. Other than, like I said before, take control of your health. It's not as hard as you might think.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, guys. Well, hopefully this has been valuable. Hopefully we have given you guys some good information to kind of think on. Consider if you know somebody who is taking statin drugs or has cholesterol issues, maybe consider sharing this with them. Do the research yourself. That's what I would encourage people to do. Do it yourself. Don't just take our word on it.
Sure.
What you'll come to find is some pretty, I think, eye-opening data and eye-opening information out there that will show loud and clear that statins are not what the drug companies have made them out to be, that the risks far, far, far outweigh any minuscule benefit that they might provide. And just realize that there is definitely an agenda there behind this. So thanks for listening, guys, and we'll talk to you guys on the next episode.
Thanks for listening to the Health Fundamentals Podcast. Be sure to subscribe so that you stay in the loop and in the know with all of the cutting-edge health information that we share. If you know other people that could benefit from this information, please share it with them as well. Also, be sure to give us a review. These really help us to ultimately help more people. Last but not least, if you have questions that you want answered live on the show, or if you have ideas for topics that you would like us to cover, please shoot us an email and let us know at info@thehealthfundamentals.com.